From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and Chief Digital Strategist at Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's podcast, I have my good friend, Mr. Bud Kraus, with me, and we're going to talk about his podcast, Seriously, Bud. It's a really interesting podcast, and this is a show you just don't want to miss. Grab a drink, sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. Hey everybody, Stunning Digital Marketing is your digital concierge. We help you put the pieces together to make your marketing success. Specialties we have including WordPress design and development, WordPress security, which is one of our most popular offerings, ads, and more. So if you want to succeed in the digital world, go on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and have a look at what we offer, and we'd be glad to help you. And let's jump on a call and make it happening. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Hey, everybody, Rob Cairns here. And today I'm here with my good friend, Mr. Bud Kraus. How are you, Bud?
Hello, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a cool Thursday in Toronto at the time of this recording. It's sunny out, and I think fall weather. We've been in like summer weather all week, and I think we finally hit the cold weather. So there you go. How are you doing today?
Good. You know, we have a beautiful fall weather today. It's a little on the warm side. The leaves are, let's just say, I think they're peak here in northern New Jersey. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. It always is, and they're starting to change. We've got red trees out around the corner, and it's actually a nice time of year. I was saying this some of the other day. I think I need to take a run down the Niagara on the Lake Niagara Falls just because the leaves down there at this time of year is spectacular. So today we're going to talk about your podcast, Seriously, Bud. Really interesting. I need to put a disclaimer. I've been a guest on that podcast. I was one of the early guests. But before we do, I like to roll nicely and introduce. Let's talk a little bit about you and what you like to do out of the WordPress space.
You know, I have become so consumed by this stuff that I regrettably am starting to forget what life is like outside of the WordPress space. But I will answer that question. So I do play guitar. I do play keyboard. I do ride my bike. I do go to the gym. I do like to go out to restaurants. I do like to travel up to a point. And the most important thing is to play with my grandboys. I have one that's almost 4 and one that's a year and a half. And I'm going to see them tomorrow. And they're just the most fun you could imagine. So I do stuff.
And Tad, you're a staunch Mets fan, if I recall.
I certainly am. It started in 1962 when they started. I couldn't understand how a team could lose 120 games. And even before I ever moved to New York, I was a huge New York Mets fan. So, yeah, I am.
And if there's any consolation, I think I started as an Expo fan because I grew up in Montreal. And everybody's favorite Toronto Expo, unfortunately, God bless his soul, Gary Carter, who passed away due to cancer, won his World Series with the Mets, actually.
Yeah. So Le Grand Orange, Rusty Staub is not your favorite Expo?
Nope, it's Gary Carter.
Okay,
but
there you go.
But Le Grand Orange played for the Mets too, and was
yes, he did,
and well loved in Montreal, I should tell you.
And here too, yes.
Yeah, he was one of a kind. No, my guy was Gary as a kid growing up. So, and you can see what basketball team I like if you're watching this podcast, but. They didn't shape any good in their opener last night.
So now you tell me this is going to be like on YouTube or something?
Sure, of course.
I didn't even get dressed.
Oh, well, that's your problem.
I'm definitely wearing the wrong clothing, but okay, we'll let that go.
Yes, you will. Um, so let's jump into the podcast. It's kind of a fun show, I would say. It's on my podcast player.
Thank
Has been
you.
for a long time. What gave you the idea, or better still, let's start with what's the premises of the podcast for people who don't?
The premise of the show is to give people a platform to talk about their lives in a way that we don't already know them in the WordPress community. So my aim is to provide people with an unexpected, or to let the listener have an unexpected conversation with somebody in the WordPress community. And it's just been a lot of fun to do. It's really been a joy. And it came out of WordCamp US last year, 2023, when I left and I said, you know, it would be really great if I could spend more time with whoever. And in that very same instant came the idea of doing a podcast where I just talk to people about their lives, who they are, where they were born, what they were like when they were kids, their education, their parents, their siblings, their spouses, whatever, their interests, everything I could think about outside of, this plugin they created or this theme or this company they started. Yes, all that stuff does get in there, but I try to hold that down to a minimum because really what I'm going for is stories, your story, human stories, because come on, that's the most interesting part of people, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I listened to another podcast called the Tech Exploder podcast by a guy by the name of Jason Howell. Jason's been in the tech space for a long time. He was at Twid and now he's on his own. And he does something very similar. He started before he does a monthly where he talks to people in the tech space and gets all the
Hmm.
backstories. And
Hmm.
it's just so interesting. And I draw the parallel between the two because what you're learning about the people and what they like, why they didn't like, why they got into it, what they got out of, where their careers went, how it
Hmm.
happened. And to me, that's really interesting because we've all got a bit of a journey, don't we?
Oh yeah. I mean, the sort of wonderful thing about doing this, and that's the way I look at it, is that I talk to people from around the world, and they have such interesting stories about, I grew up in Ukraine, I grew up in Lithuania, I grew up. It isn't just all the same story over and over again. Yes, there are similarities, of course, but the differences, the journeys are so, everybody has an amazing story. It's just my job is to try to get, is my job is to get it out of you. And because I'm just interested in people's stories.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anybody else doing anything similar in the WordPress space. There's a lot of interview shows. There's a
Hmm.
lot of shows about current events.
Hmm.
Lately, there's a lot of shows about drama. If you want to go there, I don't right now. So there's a lot of
Hmm.
things going on, but I don't think anybody does the behind the scenes look anymore. And I think that makes your show a little bit unique, to be honest.
Well, that was the whole idea. I mean, let's just start from the point of view that, doing a podcast to me is still a bit of a surprise because I would tell Bob Dunn all the time, Bob WP, I'd say, like, that's the last thing I will ever do as a podcast.
Yeah, right.
Well, the reason is that I had no reason to do one until the moment came when I had every reason to do one. And that was just so weird. It wasn't something I was planning. I am a very big believer in life happens to you while you're busy making other plans.
Yep.
Of course, I didn't think of that. And that's sometimes what happens. That's what happened.
So would I. And those who don't know, Bob is the one who does the Do the Woo podcast and a
Mhm.
good friend of both Bud and I. So
Mhm.
I'm
I
actually one of the
introduced
reasons
us,
they
I think.
introduced us. Yeah, he
Yeah.
did. He did.
Uh,
And Bud and I know very similar people in the space.
right.
We've both
Yeah.
been in this space for a long time, so we're lucky that way.
Yeah.
Um, Podcasts like this brings community together too, because when you start to understand people, it kind of strengthens the community. It doesn't hurt it. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a byproduct of what I'm doing. I mean, if I, if I can contribute to that, great, but that's out of my control. Excuse me. I, in many ways, as I do this, I really think that I was just meant to do this. I was made to do this. I mean, I was always interested in radio and still am from a little kid. And I sort of think of this as my own little radio station where I'm
Yep.
the only person on it. And it's just the way I am made, is that I was really sort of made to do this. And Rob, I have to tell you, the thing that I really like about this as much as anything is the editing process. I think is the most creative part of the whole thing, where you get to shape the conversation. Not so much, rearrange the order in which the conversation took place, but to clean it up, to get rid of the crosstalk, to make it more enjoyable, more listenable.
Mm.
And I find that to be a really interesting thing to do. And interesting, I think, to me anyway, is that it's really when I get to hear what the person is saying. You think like, well, aren't you listening when you're interviewing somebody? Yes. And here's the but. You're always thinking about what's the next question going to be? What
Mhm.
what is the person who's talking now, what are they saying that I will lead me to the next question? Where is my little hook for the next question? So you're thinking about that as much as anything, and you might be missing a few things that the person is saying. So I have found that the more I do this, the more critical I am of how I interview.
Yeah.
You sort of go into this thinking, well, I could just ask, I'll be good. Well, maybe, but like anything else, you become more of a perfectionist as you go through the process, especially if it's something that you really enjoy. You just want to get better at it.
Yep. I often, it's funny, we talk about that and we talked about how it's shaped. So you had said to me before we went there, and I'll share this, and I hope you don't mind. Do you have a list of questions? I say, no, I don't, because the style I
Right,
go on is
right.
I'll often give a lead. If it's a WordPress guest, I'll often ask the WordPress origin story. That's pretty standard. And then
Hmm.
depending on where the conversation goes, I let the guest shape the interview. And
Hmm.
that, because what I like is what you
Yeah,
do. I like a
right,
conversation. I don't
right.
want a scripted political
Me too.
interview that
Right.
shows up on the radio that the candidate said, give me the 10 questions ahead of time. I'm not
No,
doing that.
no, no. That's not a conversation, too. You don't talk to people that way. And
Yeah.
the show is all about conversation. So you just, and it's okay, at least for my show, to jump around. That is, I don't start when you were 2 years old and end up where you are today. I
Yeah.
absolutely do jump around just like you would when you're talking to somebody. That's sort of the way I structure the whole thing. If it has any structure, which is, I guess, debatable,
Yeah.
whatever.
The other thing I wanted to touch on too was you mentioned your love of radio. I think that's
Mhm.
really important. And you and I have that similarity. I don't
Yeah,
know
I know.
if I've ever shared this with you, but
Hmm.
growing up, I was an AM radio guy. I
Me
listened,
too. Yeah.
I would sit in a bedroom in Montreal, in a suburb of Montreal, with an
Hmm.
old flip style clock radio at night, and I'd play spin the dial. And
Hmm.
by that, I meant what US station, because we were close enough to the US border, could I find for
Hmm.
sports or talk or
Hmm.
anything else? And I think those of us, like you and I
Hmm.
think of my friend Ross Brand, who was a radio guy, he worked in radio. Those of us who have that love for radio, podcasting is really easy because to listen to or to do,
Hmm.
because it's just this transition. By the way,
Yeah. Yeah.
still listen to the radio every morning, not on a conventional radio, on an Alexa. And I can say that word in this house because that's not my wake word. Behind me
Mhm.
every morning, over the internet for an hour. So there you go.
Well, I have to tell you that I still am a radio guy. I will be till the end. I
Yeah.
think I want to be buried with a transistor radio
Yeah.
attached to my ear, which I listen to all night long. And in fact, I just came back from Santa Fe. Now, wherever I travel, I take my transistor radio and I want to listen to stations at night, of course, because you get better reception. And
Mm.
I'm listening to Nebraska and I'm listening to Kansas and I'm listening. I mean, how cool is, I mean, and I literally will stay up or wake up during the night, and sort of fall asleep to radio. It drifts in and out of my consciousness. And I do spin the dial around a little bit at night, just to hear different stations. It's really cool. I think it's sort of before the internet. to me there
Yeah.
was radio. And once the internet came around, I thought of that as sort of another way of radio with pictures. I don't know.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I'm just a radio guy. That's all I
And
gotta
and
say.
and it's funny too because at one time I was in the shortwave as a kid growing up as
Hmm.
well. And
Yeah,
I actually always a dying medium because the internet. You can go listen to
right.
local radio
Yeah,
stations.
sure.
I know even in Canada, CBC Radio, our national radio broadcaster, pulled out of shortwave last year, the year before, because there's no point anymore. I mean, times have changed, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go on to guests. You've had
Okay.
how many shows have you done now? I think you're over
I
30.
Yeah, I am about, boy, you'd think I know. The
Close
reason
enough.
why, yeah, it's in the 30s. Yeah, I drop a new episode every Friday, but because I was out of town last week, I didn't drop an episode. Since I launched in March, I've only missed 2 Fridays.
Yeah.
So I try everything I can do to drop every Friday at 8 o'clock my time.
So I'm going to ask you the question. You've dropped over 30, and if
Mhm.
you had three guests that you haven't got on your show yet and are
Mhm.
hard to obtain, who would they be? Do you know?
Well, I don't think anybody's hard to obtain. I mean, I haven't, one or two people have sort of been reluctant or didn't want to do it. One person in particular said no, that, this person was not comfortable. Uh, but, um, who do I want? The interesting thing is I want people with good stories who are willing to come on and
Yeah.
talk about good stories, their
Yeah.
story. So I don't go by like how well known they are.
Yeah.
Sure, it helps if you, but it helps if you're like well known, but not necessarily. And I'll tell you why. A lot of people know the stories of well-known people in the WordPress community,
Yeah.
so they may not be as inclined to listen to the podcast as compared to people who are, if you will, more obscure or not as well known. Those episodes seem to be the ones that more people listen to. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And what I would say is the well-known people, people like me, people like you, have
I'm
been
not well
on,
known. Rob, nobody knows who the hell I am. Come on.
but people, I've been on a number of other shows,
Right. They know
and
you. Right.
and that's the reality of it. So sometimes I think where we get caught in podcasting is we don't go to. I like to elevate people or people not known in the space, but a lot of
Hmm.
people don't do that because
Hmm. Oh,
they
I
think
do.
that will draw ratings, and I don't think it always draws numbers, to be honest with you.
No, I, I, I won't turn down anybody really,
Yeah.
because who am I to turn them down? I mean, especially the ones that I don't know. In fact, the shows I think that are the best ones are with people that I don't know because I'm going in there not knowing their story. And that's not to say that the ones that I do know, they're bad shows. It's just that I seem to be a little more curious about like who they are because I don't know them. And
Yep.
that the show is my chance to get to know them. So, you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of
Um,
it's just so interesting that that I've come to the conclusion that I don't really care if they're well known or not. It's
hmm,
just not, a thing to me.
yeah. Who was your first guest?
Marcus Burnett. Ever hear
Oh,
of
oh yeah.
him?
My dear friend, Mr. Burnett,
Yeah,
over
yes.
at GoDaddy of all places, but
Hmm.
he he's yeah, he would have been a good conversation. Yes,
Well, the funny thing is, can I tell you real quick?
sure.
It was not, I interviewed a whole bunch of people before I ever released an episode. And Marcus was the first person I actually did interview. And it just turned out, hey, why don't I do this one first? And the funny story is, my wife and I were driving in the car. The episode had just dropped. And I said, I want you to listen to this. And I thought for sure she's going to say, oh, this is terrible. I don't like this. And turn this off like after like 30 seconds. And she actually started listening it. And she looked at me and she says, this is pretty good. And she listened to the whole thing. And now she's, I would say, like a regular listener with me. Um, I,
One
and
one
I
more
just
num
think it's
one more
amazing. Sure.
one more number for you to add to your total because of your wife. So there you go.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't know if she's a subscriber, but it's okay.
you need to fix
Yeah,
that one now.
I
So
do. Yeah.
yeah, you do. Yeah, so yeah, Marcus would be a good guest. And you've had like I was just looking at the list again real quickly. You've had a number of people. You've had Vito Peleg, who we both know
Yeah.
quite well. You've
Yeah.
had Cammy on. You've had Mr. Westgard on, who's a dear
Yeah.
friend of
I've had
mine.
Vikas, I've had
Yeah.
just a lot of Bob's been on, but what's so strange, is that, when I started this, I said, if you have any problems getting people to go on the show, just stop because that should be the easiest thing. And it is the easiest thing. And as it turns out, I've got about 3 years supply of people. So getting people to come on, that's not a hard thing to do. People want to
Once
talk about themselves.
yeah, once you get past the 10th episode, getting interview
Yeah,
guests,
is easy.
even for me, it's easy. All you
Yeah,
got
I'm
to do is put a
sure.
call. All you got to do is put out a call on Twitter and say,
Yeah.
I'm looking for guests
Yeah.
here, here, and here. Um, Anybody interested? And I'll get DMs lit up like the Christmas tree. So,
Yeah. Now, the thing though with my show is that you only get one shot. Okay.
yep,
That's it. Because you only have one time to tell your story. There isn't going to be two or three of you, or it doesn't work that way. And like I said, I've got like 3 years supply of people. Why would I do a repeat? Now I may
yes,
repackage and do some things along the way. I don't know about that yet, but we'll see. Hey, can I talk about something? I have
sure.
an announcement to make about the podcast Seriously Bud. By the way, there is a website called seriouslybud.com
Yep.
where you can go there and you can subscribe to my newsletter. I wish you would, because that way you'll get updated as to like who's on the show, who's coming on the show, stuff like that, past episodes, all that kind of stuff. But the big news is I have a sponsor, and my very first sponsor is OmniSend, a company that specializes in email marketing and SMS messaging. And I've actually started to use their service because I don't want to just be a passive recipient of my sponsor. I want to know what their service is so that I could help promote it. I think that's my obligation to them, that they just don't send me a check, well, whatever, transfer money to my bank, and I just stick them into the podcast and that's the end. No, I really think that I should be actively involved in supporting my sponsors. That's what I'm going to be doing. And I hope, and so of course they'll be on the website, they'll be in the newsletter, they'll be in the podcast, but other sponsors are coming. Now, I want to just say one other thing too about sponsors. When I started this thing, that was the last thing on my mind.
Yep.
And I would say, like, I actually did say this many times. I don't care if I get sponsors because I love doing this. If somebody wants to sponsor or if it comes into okay, fine. I'm not going to say no, but it's not the reason why I do this. I do this because I love to do this. That's why I'm doing it.
I get that. I
Yeah.
actively, if anybody's listening to this show, no, I don't have an active sponsor except for my own agency.
Mm-hmm.
I actually my own digital concierge, as I call it now.
Mm-hmm.
I do not want at this point a sponsor.
Right.
I don't do it for that reason. And
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason I haven't taken one is that allows me to say what I want, how I want, where I
Right.
want, and
Right.
oh well, I'm not.
Yeah, and I have to say, I do wonder if that's going to change things a little bit now that I will have sponsors because that's coming. I hope not. I don't think it will. But I also now do feel a responsibility to OmniSend and to other sponsors that are coming. I will absolutely feel that. I wouldn't say pressure, but responsibility to them to do the very best I can do for the show and for them. So
You know.
yeah, it does change things. Absolutely.
So let me ask you a question. Did you, if you don't mind sharing, if you can't, I understand. Did you go after them or did they come to you?
Oh, I do mind. No, I don't mind you telling. So this is a great story. Do you know this story, or are you just laying
No,
this question out?
I
Okay.
don't. I'm laying the
All
question
right.
out, my
So
friend.
so it's a great story. So I was at WordCamp US this year, which would be September 2024. And I walked out of the convention center and I see these two ladies in black leather jackets sitting on a whatever. They were sitting on the stone bench or something. And I walk by them and say, "Hey, guy, how you guys doing?" Or whatever. One thing, and very quickly they said to me, "We want to sponsor your show." And I said, "What? You don't even know my name?" "Oh, yes, we do." I said, "Okay." And I kept thinking, like, this is ridiculous. And then they told me who they were, that they're from Omnisend. And I said, "Oh, you guys are serious?" And they said, "Yeah, we want to make a deal." So we proceeded to talk for 2, 3 days on and off, and we did reach a deal. And then I started to realize, and some other hosts and other some web hosts and other people were starting to say to me, "We want to sponsor you." And so, I mean, that's how it started. It almost started as a joke because, like, I didn't go to WordCamp thinking like I better come home with a sponsor for my show. That was the last thing on my mind. So it was really thrilling and very exciting for that to happen. So thank you,
Congrat
Omnisend.
and congratulations,
Thanks.
and thanks, Omnisend, for looking after my friend, Mr. Kraus,
Yeah.
because he's got to. Bud's a good guy sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. You wouldn't know.
Yes, I would. I know all, Mr. Kraus. I know all. Um,
Well, you and I, let's be fair, we have never met in person. I don't know how long we've known each other, a couple of years now, I guess.
couple years.
But
It's just not worked out that way
yeah,
between this and my
yeah,
health, and it
yeah,
will happen. It will happen.
yeah, it will.
Uh, is there anything else you wanted to share about the show? You've shared where to see it.
Well,
Where's
it comes,
where's
yeah, you could, let me just tell you real quick. You can subscribe to Seriously Bud wherever you get your podcast. So it's
yep,
on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's on
Pocket
this, that, and
Cast?
yeah, it's on everything.
Yep.
And it comes out every Friday, 8 o'clock Eastern time. And it usually lasts about 30 minutes or so. And again, the website, seriouslybud.com, has an easy way to access all the past episodes of the show. It's very easy to listen to anybody's story right from my website. So,
And what I would tell you is go and subscribe. If you haven't listened to this show over a couple of weeks or a couple of months, listen to all the back episodes because
yeah.
every story is unique. And
Yep.
these are not time constraint. People are telling their history, and
Right.
take the time and
You,
listen to it. I know I subscribe to it I'm a Android user, so I'm using Pocket Cast,
mhm.
which is an automatic product. If people don't realize it or not realize it, they're the ones who own it. It doesn't matter.
It's
Podcast
very
player
good.
for it's still the best podcast player for Android. I also had
Yeah.
that podcast player on my iPad. I do not use Apple Podcasts. And
Mhm.
Pocket Cast also has a web version. If you pay for it, you can access your podcast on the web. So I actually very often listen on my computer right through the web. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
make a point of going and subscribing to Bud's podcast and supporting him. If they want to get a hold of you, Bud, how's the best way? Email or X? Or
Well, yeah, the best way is Bud at Joy of WP. It's joyofwp.com. Bud at joyofwp.com. That's in addition to the podcast, I actually I want to say I work for a living, but the work I do, I'll just say real quickly, is
go ahead.
I'm a WordPress creative, if you will, that I create content for web hosts and other services in the form of articles and videos and stuff like that that deal with WordPress.
Yeah,
So
and what I'll tell you is Bud is very good at it. I know you've done work for Insta WP at one time for a new.
Kinsta, I'm just having a new thing coming out on theme JSON on
Yep.
Kinsta's coming out, and GoDaddy and Hostinger and on and on, whatever.
And
So I've
by the
written for a
way,
lot of folks. Yeah.
as we talked about this, WordPress 6.7 is coming down the pipe. So
Mhm.
if you need some content created, reach out to Bud. He's good at it.
Yeah. Yes, good idea.
Yeah.
I'm so busy, Rob. It's don't bother me.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna tell people. No, seriously, I the just real quick, I'm stunned at the market that is out there for people like me. They want me to write content and create videos, and you think like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Seriously, bud? Yeah, seriously. So, um, if I was a younger person, I'd be starting a content agency. I would, because there's so much work out there. It's crazy.
There's tons, and
Yeah,
creating good content takes effort and things like that.
yes, it
But
does. Yeah, it
thanks for
takes time. It does.
thanks thanks for coming on, talking about the show, and more importantly, thanks for your friendship, even though you're a Mets
Thank
fan.
you.
And you
Yeah.
have a wonderful day, my friend.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for listening to the STM Show. The STM Show is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, your digital concierge. For all your digital marketing needs, especially WordPress security, jump on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and let's help you put the pieces together and make your business succeed in the marketing realm. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. A very special thank you to Bud Kraus for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I love you. I miss you very much. And thanks for all the inspiration over the years and your caring, your understanding, and helping me grow as an individual. Thank you, Dad.